Namaskar students. Hope you are hale and hearty, taking care of your health and your studies. I know you were waiting for this video, so here we are. Before we start, I would like to ask you a very simple thing. What do you call that form of government which is formed by the people, which works for the people and which is of the people? No points for guessing. This is called a democratic setup of government. Now imagine so many people from different ethnicity, from different religions, they all live together and they form a very strong bond in this democratic setup. Some big countries of the world have struggled to cope up with the issue of diversity in order to maintain the democratic setup of their country. Today, we shall discuss that only. So, let's get going with chapter number 3 from the books Democratic Politics. The name of the chapter is Democracy and Diversity. In the last chapter, we saw how power can be distributed to accommodate linguistic and regional diversities. But language and region are not the only features that give a distinct identity to people. Sometimes people also identify themselves and relate with others on the basis of their physical appearance, class, religion, gender, caste, tribe, etc. In this chapter, we study how democracy responds to social differences, divisions, and inequalities. We begin with an example of public expression of social divisions. We then draw some general lessons about how social differences can take various forms. We then turn to how democratic politics affects and is affected by these social diversities. The picture on this page depicts an important landmark in the history of the civil rights movement in the United States. These represent the medal ceremony of the 200 meters race in 1968 Olympics held in Mexico City. The two men standing with clenched fists upraised and heads bowed while the American national anthem was played are the US athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos. They are African Americans. They had won the gold and the bronze medals, respectively. They received their medals wearing black socks and no shoes to represent black poverty. With this gesture, they tried to draw international attention to the racial discrimination in the United States. The black gloved and raised clenched fists were meant to symbolize black power. The silver medalist, white Australian athlete Peter Norman, wore a human rights badge on his shirt during the ceremony to show his support to the two Americans. Do you think that Carlos and Smith should have raised an internal matter of American society in an international forum? Would you say that what they did was political? Why do you think Peter Norman, who was neither black nor American, joined in the gesture of the protest? If you were in Norman's place, what would you have done? The International Olympic Association held Carlos and Smith guilty of violating the Olympic spirits by making a political statement. Their medals were taken back. Back home, they were subjected to a lot of criticism. Norman too suffered for his action and was not included in the Australian team for the next Olympics. But their action succeeded in gaining international attention for the civil rights movement in the US. Recently, the San Jose State University, of which they were former students, honored them and installed their statue in the university campus. When Norman died in 2006, Smith and Carlos were pallbearers at his funeral. Civil rights movement in USA 1954 to 1968 refers to a set of events and reform movement aimed at abolishing legal racial discrimination against African Americans, led by Martin Luther King Jr. This movement practiced non-violent methods of civil disobedience against racially discriminatory laws and practices. African Americans, Afro Americans, Black Americans, or blacks are the terms used to refer mainly to the descendants of Africans who were brought into America as slaves between 17th century and early 19th century. The Black Power movement emerged in 1966 and lasted till 1975, which was a more militant anti-racist movement, advocating even violence if necessary to end racism in US. Now, some Dalit groups decided to participate in the UN Conference Against the Racism in Durban in 2001, demanding the inclusion of caste in the agenda of this conference. Here are the three reactions to this movement. First is Amandeep Kaur, a government official. As per her, Constitution declares caste discrimination to be illegal. If some caste discrimination continues, it is an internal matter. She is opposed to this being raised on an international platform. Next is Oinam. Oinam is a sociologist. She is opposed to this because caste and race are not similar divisions. Caste is a social division while race is a biological one. Raising caste in this conference on racism would mean equating the two. To their reply, Ashok, a Dalit activist, says that the argument about internal matter is a way of preventing open discussion of oppression and discrimination. Race is not purely biological. It is as much a legal and sociological category as caste. Caste discrimination must be raised in this conference. So, which of the three opinions do you agree with the most and why? So, the athletes in the example above were responding to the social divisions and social inequalities. But does that happen only in societies which have racial divisions? In the previous two chapters, we have already noted some other forms of social divisions. The examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka show both regional and social divisions. In the case of Belgium, we noted that people who live in different regions speak different languages. In Sri Lanka, we noted linguistics as well as religious differences. Thus, social diversity can take different forms in different ways. Now, let's talk about the origin of social differences. So, these social differences are mostly based on accident of birth. Normally, we don't choose to belong to our community. We belong to it simply because we were born into it. We all experience social differences because on accident of birth in our everyday life. People around us are male or female. They are tall or short, have different kinds of complexions or have different physical abilities or disabilities. But all kinds of social differences are not based on accident of birth. Some of the differences are based on our choice. For example, some people are atheists. They don't believe in God or any religion. Some people choose to follow a religion other than the one in which they were born. Most of us choose what to study, which occupation to take up, and which game or cultural activity to take part in. All these lead to formation of social groups that are based on our choices. Every social difference does not lead to social division. Social differences divide similar people from one another, but they also unite very different people. People belonging to different social groups share differences and similarities cutting across the boundaries of their groups. In the instance above, Carlos and Smith were similar in one way. Both were African Americans and thus different from Norman, who was white. But they were also all similar in other ways. They were all athletes who stood up against racial discrimination. It is fairly common for people belonging to the same religion to feel that they do not belong to the same community because their caste or sect is different. It is also possible for people from different religions to have the same caste and feel close to each other. Rich and poor person from same family often do not keep close relation with each other, for they feel they are very different. Thus, we all have more than one identity and can belong to more than one social group. We have different identities in different contexts. So, in your books, you can see a cartoon. A cartoon like this can be read by different people to mean different things. What does this cartoon mean to you? How do your fellow students read this? Quite clearly, you can see a difference of opinion in the answers given by your fellows. Overlapping and cross-cutting differences. Social division takes place when some social differences overlap with other differences. The difference between the blacks and whites become a social division in the US because the blacks tend to be poor, homeless and discriminated against. In our country, Dalits tend to be poor and landless. Many deliberate efforts are being done by the government to curb this social division. Special provisions in policy making are kept to uplift them. Strict punishment is given to people practicing this discrimination. Yet, at the community level, in the rural areas, they often face discrimination and injustice. Situations of this kind produce social divisions. When one kind of social difference becomes more important than the other, and people start feeling that they belong to different communities. Social divisions can divide a society into two parts, and this can act as a threat, and we should not let it happen. If we see that any kind of discrimination occurs around us, we must raise our voice, because no country can develop until they are one. So we must look for solution if a division like this is found around us. If social differences cross-cut one another, it is difficult to pit one group of people against the other. It means that the groups that share a common interest on one issue are likely to be different sides on the different issue. Consider the cases of Northern Ireland and the Netherlands. Both are predominantly Christian but divided between Catholic and Protestants. In Northern Ireland, class and religion overlap with each other. If you are a Catholic, you are also more likely to be poor, and you may have suffered a history of discrimination. In Netherlands, class and religion tend to cut across each other. Catholics and Protestants are about equally likely to be poor or rich. The result is that Catholics and Protestants have had conflict in Northern Ireland while they do not do so in Netherlands. Overlapping social differences create possibilities of deep social divisions and tensions. Cross-cutting social differences are easier to accommodate. Social divisions of one kind or another exist in most countries. It does not matter whether the country is big or small. India is a vast country with many communities. Belgium is a small country with many communities. Even those countries such as Germany and Sweden that were once highly homogeneous are undergoing rapid change with influx of people from other parts of the world. Migrants bring with them their own culture and tend to form a different social community. In this sense, most countries of the world are multicultural. Over here we have read two words, homogeneous. Homogeneous is a society that has similar kinds of people, especially where there are no significant ethnic differences. And then we have migrant. Anybody who shifts from one region or country to another region within a country or to another country, usually for work or other economic opportunities. From here we talk about politics of social division. How do these social divisions affect politics? What does politics do to these social divisions? At first sight, it would appear that the combination of politics and social division is very dangerous and explosive. Democracy involves competition among various political parties. Their competition tends to divide any society. If they start competing in terms of some existing social divisions. It can make social divisions into political divisions and lead to conflict, violence, or even disintegration of the country. This has happened in many countries. Range of outcomes. Take the case of Northern Ireland that we referred to above. The region of the United Kingdom has been for many years the site of a violent and a bitter ethno-political conflict. Its population is divided into two major sects of Christianity. 53% are Protestants and 44% are Roman Catholics. The Catholics were represented by national parties who demanded that Northern Ireland be unified with the Republic of Ireland, a predominantly Catholic country. The Protestants were represented by the Unionists who wanted to remain with the UK, which is predominantly Protestant. Hundreds of civilians, militants, and security forces were killed in the fight between Unionists and Nationalists and between the security forces of UK and the Nationalists. It was only in 1998 that the UK government and the Nationalists reached a peace treaty, after which the latter suspended their armed struggle. In Yugoslavia, the story did not have a happy ending. Political competition along religious and ethnic lines led to the disintegration of Yugoslavia into 6 independent countries. At the same time, every expression of social division in politics does not lead to such disasters. We have already seen the social divisions of one kind or another exist in most countries of the world. Social divisions affect voting in most countries. People from one community tend to prefer some party more than others. In many countries, there are parties that focus only on one community, yet all this does not lead to disintegration of the country. So there are 3 factors which are crucial in deciding the outcome of politics of social divisions. First of all, the outcome depends on how people perceive their identities. If people see their identities in singular and exclusive terms, it becomes very difficult to accommodate. Secondly, it depends on how political leaders raise the demand of any community. It is easier to accommodate demands that are within the constitutional framework and are not at the cost of another community. The demand for only Sinhala was at the cost of interest and identity of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka. In Yugoslavia, the leader of different ethnic communities presented their demands in such a way that these could not be accommodated within a single country. And now the third one is, it depends on how the government reacts to the demands of different groups. As we saw in the examples of Belgium and Sri Lanka, if the rulers are willing to share power and accommodate the reasonable demands of minority community, social divisions become less threatening for the country. But if they try to suppress such a demand in the name of national unity, the end result is often quite the opposite. Such attempts at forced integration often sow the seeds of disintegration. On page number 33 of your books, The Hidden Apadhi, the poem which is given out here, it clearly asks a very serious question by Daya Pawar. One day someone dug up a 20th century city and ends up in this observation. Here's an interesting inscription. This water tap is open to all castes and religions. What could it have meant? That this society was divided? That some were high while others were low? Well, all right. Then this city deserved burying. Why did they call it the Machine Age? Seems like the Stone Age in the 20th century. So, in these lines, Daya Pawar clearly says how inhumane it is on the part of a literate society to follow something which divides the entire society in the name of religion or sect or caste. Moving further, Vaman Nimbalkar and his poem Mother, Dark, Dark, Slender Body. This was my mother, drudged in the woods for sticks from morning on. All we brothers sitting, waiting, watching for her. and if she didn't sell the woods, all of us slept hungry. Vaman clearly shows the struggle their mother had to go through to sell those sticks, failing which they had to sleep with an empty stomach. These are serious concerns. So let's try to analyze what we have learned from today's session. Tommy Smith and John Carlos belong to which ethnic group of America? Very right, they belong to the African American group of America. So which event in USA is referred as the Black Power movement of 1966-1973? Movement to end racism. Which university has recently installed the statues of Tommy Smith and John Carlos in their campus? Very right, it's the St. Joe's State University. What was the name of that Australian athlete who showed sympathy and support to the two American athletes who tried to draw international attention to racial discrimination in USA? Correct, it was Peter Norman. Name the leader of civil rights movement in USA. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Very right. Now let's do some fill-ups. Most countries of the world are dash cultural, multicultural. Very good. In a democracy, dash expression of social divisions is normal and can be healthy. Political expression of social divisions is normal and can be healthy. Very good. Expression of various kinds of social divisions in dash often results in their cancelling one another and reducing their intensity. Again, expression of various kinds of social divisions in politics often result in their cancelling one another and reducing their intensity. Very good. Last, dash is the best way to fight for recognition and also to accommodate diversity. No points for guessing, it is democracy which is the best way to fight for recognition and also to accommodate diversity. India as a true democracy gives the power to its citizens to ask questions and their representatives have to answer. But we have to ask questions. With this, we come to end of this video. We'll be back with many more videos. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy and keep studying. Namaskar.